All right, my friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Brian, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the medical insurance claims process as it relates to submitting claims, why it's important to have a good agent on your side, and some methods that insurance companies use as a whole, which can often overcomplicate the process. Now, for this video, I'm going to be somewhat broad in my discussion here about the overall healthcare industry and provide some general examples that I have had personally, both myself and with my family in recent years. Now, at the time of making this video, many of you have been asking me about my own recent insurance claims process and things that were covered in my recent hospital event I had this past summer. And the simple answer is, at the time of recording this video, it's sort of been covered. All right. Well, I did receive most of the claim. Some of it is still outstanding, so the claim has not been paid in full. All right. As to my experience with this overall claims process, all right, I will discuss all that later. But for now, I want to get into more of a general discussion about the entire healthcare industry, the insurance side of it, and the claims process. So it is probably best to say, and to frame it this way, is that the health insurance companies as a whole are really no different from whether you're dealing with them in Western countries or really anywhere throughout the world, okay? While the procedures as to what is and what is not covered can be different, right? It should come as absolutely no surprise that the process can be bureaucratic, okay? Policies tend to be over complex, and let's be honest, they're usually not the most enjoyable to work with, okay? That's just the honest truth of the entire industry, right? Now, I'm not saying this to be negative about one specific group or company, okay? Though as a whole, the health insurance industry is generally known to have its own challenges. This is why I am a huge component of paying out of pocket for most healthcare needs, okay, and outpatient services, and retain health insurance to cover the higher cost of unexpected emergencies. So let's first discuss a few common procedural hurdles that can make the insurance claims process complex, often tipping the balance in favor of the insurer, okay? And most of these I have personally experienced myself. So I am talking from a place of firsthand experience. I pretty much have seen all of these dealing with either things from family or dealing with my own issues in my own claim process. Okay, one of the most common in the industry is known as slow walking, okay? Slow walking documentation. While it is normal practice, right, for the claims process for them to ask for additional documentation, slow walking is when the request cycle is continuous, right? Over and over again, they keep asking for something more and something more, and you'll notice this because the requests just keep getting kind of broader and broader, okay? The challenge with this is that this puts the burden back on you as the person submitting the claim, right? And you're going to have some very specific deadlines. You're going to have specific steps that you go through to submit documentation. So the burden gets put on you. Also, this has a benefit for the insurer to reset the clock. If they are required to make a decision on a claim within a set period of time, by sending another request of information often resets that clock, allowing them to potentially delay a payment or a decision. Okay, so if you suspect that this is going on, the best thing you can do is document everything and get all documentation, all document requests in writing as much as you can. Usually email works best for this, and specifically ask for deadlines, okay? The mistake people tend to make during this slow walking process is they get frustrated and then they just send in everything, right? And what tends to happen with that is you have some insurance clerk, they ask for one thing and you send them 10 documents and they're like, well, none of this makes sense, because they get confused. So if they ask for XYZ document, send them XYZ document, okay? And confirm they received that, then follow that up and ask them, okay, you have this document now, what is the timeline, you know, from this point forward? All right, so that's what you want to push back on them. All right, second, there's a practice in the industry of denying claims based on pre-existing conditions. This is where the insurance company, okay, not the medical professional, this is important. The insurance company makes a determination the condition was caused by a pre-existing condition that was not covered in the insurance policy. Okay, how this can happen is it is common for insurance companies to have the attending doctor, right, fill out an insurance medical report, which you as the patient may never see. Right? This report usually asks the doctor to list out any medical history, whereby the insurance company may customize this form and ask a very broad-reaching question about pre-existing conditions. In a way, they are guiding the doctor to give them an answer that could be favorable to the insurance company. This is known as a leading question, whereby the question itself is written in a way to prompt a specific response. Now, these questions are not often the final diagnosis. That's another important key here. Okay, rather they may be asking questions like, and they'll phrase it like this. They'll say something like, "Hey, doctor, is the patient's condition associated with," and then they list out a pre-existing condition. Okay, this is a common practice that they use. All right, the health insurance companies use in order to complicate the process and often deny claims based on these type of statements. Okay. It's not the core cause of the issue, but it's rather a parallel or potential cause of the issue. So what do you do if you find yourself in a situation whereby the claim was denied under a condition like this? Well, contact the insurance company directly and ask the insurance company, and in fact demand from them the paperwork that they based their decision on. Okay, this is usually, again, some medical report between the doctor and the insurance company, again, that you may have never seen. Okay, and if you feel that the claim was denied based on a broad statement like this or an unrelated assessment and not the final diagnosis, then you could file an appeal with the insurance company and have this claim reevaluated. I would highly recommend you look into that if you've run into a case like this. Okay, third, there is a practice used in the industry known as a post-claims underwriting audit. Okay, this is where the insurer, after a claim, so you send in a claim, okay, they launch a in-depth, deep investigation into your original insurance application and your medical history from years prior, even before you were a customer with that insurance company. Okay, the goal here is to find any inconsistencies, to rescind or cancel your policy retroactively so they can deny the claim. Okay, now items to watch out for if you suspect that you've kind of started one of these audits. Here's a few things. Okay, there's a sudden deep dive into your past medical history, a request for old records, old procedures, questions that seem completely unrelated to the current claim that you send in. Or something you may find is there is a notable shift in the tone in communication. Okay, before it may be just, just casual back and forth, hey, we need this document, then it becomes more formalized in structure. Often because what happens is your claim now has been sent to a new department, more of a specialized department, for this additional deep dive review. And you'll notice that in the tone of communication. Now, a fourth practice that is well known in the industry is known as a post-claim fulfillment, whereas the insurer may only make a partial payment or an underpayment as a method to pay less than the valid claim amount without any real clear justification behind it. Okay, for example, they may pay most of the bill, like 80% or 90%, yet they may defer the remaining unpaid amount with a, like use some kind of vague reasoning like an administrative adjustment, or they send you a random spreadsheet that has a bunch of codes on it, but there's no real explanation. Okay, the concept behind this, it's kind of like they're calculated bets, right? The insurer is hoping that you will not, essentially they're hoping that you're going to be relieved, that you have received most of the payment and that you lack the energy or the resources to resolve or pursue the remaining smaller balance. Okay, this is a common method, okay, that insurance companies use to settle claims for less than the full value. Okay, now these industry practices you will often find throughout the world. This is not unusual, okay? And they are common amongst the entire insurance industry, okay? So that whether this is medical insurance, whether this is property or renter's insurance, whether this is homeowners or other sectors, right? These are common practices you find in the insurance industry. Now, my intention here is to educate you on common practices within this industry, okay? And what to look out for your own claim process so you can ask better questions if you find yourself in a situation like this. All right, now with that, what about my own health insurance claims process from this recent inpatient hospital event that I had this past August 2025? Well, I discussed this earlier. Was the claim fulfilled? Well, the short answer, like I said, was sort of. Okay, even though my policy is marketed as a full inpatient coverage at 100% with no deductible, excluding any pre-existing conditions, at the time of making this video, I have only received the majority of the claim. There is still a remaining unpaid balance, okay, with an ongoing reevaluation. Right now, is this a bad look? Yes, it is. Okay. Does this instill confidence in me? No, it does not. All right. And on a personal note, the procedural complications to get to this point was highly stressful, and I'm not happy I went through it. All right. However, this is where I found it critical to have an excellent agent and team that can assist you with the overly complex process and who can be an advocate for you in getting some level of positive resolution. Now, is my claim unusual? No, not at all. Okay. In fact, when I was with my sisters and we had to deal with basically our parents had passing a number of years ago, right? The process seemed to go on forever. Everything from submitting all sorts of documents, waiting for weeks just to be told that they need more documentation or we were missing this form. Okay, some random paperwork from another department needed to be submitted. It's common, and we all know that the medical industry is complex. Okay, it's unfortunately that's the facts. That's the time we live in. As for my claim and my situation, this is where it got tricky. My inpatient coverage should have been paid by the insurance company at the hospital, yet on my policy, I did have a singular one pre-existing condition, which was considered during the initial medical evaluation, okay? And this one item was looked at and determined not to be the cause of my condition. However, within the paperwork, they had one of these broad phrases one of these questions that tripped up everything. And of course, by focusing on my one and only pre-existing condition, right, where any good doctor would sit back and perform a proper and complete evaluation, they take everything into consideration, right, using all available data to them. When they filled out the history report, they would have mostly likely said yes, and that was the way the question was asked. So there's one broadly written question, in short, right, ignored the final diagnosis, right? But by using this statement, allowed the insurer basically to get that yes answer on the initial document and then deny the claim at the hospital. So this invoked non-payment at the time of discharge and something I now had to pay in full, upfront, out of pocket while being discharged. That was not fun. All right. Now, this caused a significant amount of undue stress and complications, and this is why I had to send in a claim for reimbursement after basically I was discharged. Again, this is where I was able to pull in my agent and got them basically involved right from the start. They stepped in, they helped out with get the claims process going, right? And I can say I am extremely grateful for them and having their help navigate this process, right? And I think this is an important note here I want to highlight, okay? Even looking back at the challenges I had basically with my sisters and our parents passing, right? I'm dealing with all the medical bills and all the paperwork, right? There were multiple medical facilities involved, right? We had crazy billing codes, everything had to be triple checked, what was paid, what wasn't, right? It doesn't matter if you're in the United States or you're abroad, the medical insurance process is going to be complex. So having a team, having an advocate to help guide you through the process, and specifically my example here, right, was very, very helpful. So let's talk about lessons learned and some tips if you ever find yourself in basically this process of having to submit insurance claims. All right, the first and foremost, right, I believe is managing your expectations, okay? I'll be honest, there were times I was absolutely pissed, right? I can't deny that, right? Now, I was not pissed off at any specific one person, rather I was frustrated at the overall process. But I didn't stay there, okay? I did the next step, right? Even though I was angry at times, right? I just, okay, what do they need? Send that in, and I follow the rules, okay? But yeah, there were times I was frustrated. Second, as I already mentioned, but deserves repeating here, is get yourself help, get yourself an advocate. Working with an agent or a team that can represent you, right, definitely is going to provide some help and take a lot of the pressure off you, okay? Hopefully, right, they will make that process smoother, which again, I am very thankful that I had somebody on my side helping me guide me through this process. All right, and third, very common, document everything, okay? Keep call logs, emails, okay? Take notes and put dates on things, okay? Whatever basically was submitted, who you submitted to, times, dates, all right, all that information. Ask for written email confirmations of receipt of documents sent, and expect multiple rounds. Just expect there's going to be a lot of back and forth, right? And then if it ever gets to a point where things kind of start to really get bogged down, if you need to pull in professional support, at that time you have some documentation that you can present. So there you have it, my friends. One aspect of the medical industry that many of us are generally not the most excited about, yet to cover our backsides, just in case we find ourselves in a situation where we need to submit basically a claim, you've got a little bit more information. All right, I know I walked a broad line here, but as an expat looking at this globally, the medical insurance industry can have significant differences, right? Whether it's between country to country or region to region. So I was trying to do my best to kind of walk a general line here and provide you with some, experiences as well as some tips that maybe you will find helpful. So let's go ahead and talk about this down in the comment section. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, my friends. Take care. Cheers.